Alright, hey guys, how you doing? Chris here with Ramadan Quads. I want to touch on a subject today regarding soldering motors to the small Nano ESCs. Basically, what we have here is a very small ESCs, and we've got NFETs really close to the soldering pads here. Right, so when you go and solder to these guys here, if you're using a cheap iron, you know, wall plug iron type thing, or if you're using a soldering station with not enough heat, it basically means you're going to need to hold your iron on these guys here for too long, and then you end up having issues with the NFETs, you know, floating around on the PCB there, because the heat transmits from these pads so quickly to these small NFETs right next to the pads there, that you're basically, what guys are doing is they're desoldering the NFETs on there. These little guys here, while soldering their motor to this. And you know, and I get customers, you know, not that many, but I have a few customers who email me, and then they're explaining to me that they may have a problem with one ESC, and what I usually do is I will ask the customer to send me a picture of the solder joints on the ESCs, because a picture can give me a very good idea of whether the person who soldered the ESCs has proper equipment and proper solder to achieve this, or if the person is likely overheating these guys here. Okay, and I'll give you an example of such picture here. Let's have a look at my monitor here. And this is a picture of an ESC from a customer who assembled the model himself. And as you can see by these joints over here, I mean, these things, they're cold joints. You can clearly see from the little bits of solder all over the place there that the person is using not enough heat to solder this on there. Really poor joints on there. And then this person is wondering why the ESC doesn't work. At this point, if you were to do this kind of job on a larger ESCs, which can handle a lot of heat, you may be able to get away with it. But on the Nano ESCs, if you start doing these kind of joints there, it clearly means you have the wrong tool for the job, and you're heating up that PCB way too much, and then you disrupt these NFETs here, and then of course the ESCs won't work well for you from there. So I'm going to proceed now with showing you guys how to do this, how to solder on these little guys, and get in and get out quick and use high heat. And for this, of course, you're going to need the right tools for the job. So the first thing we're going to do is skin our wires. Once we skin our wires on the motor, we are going to tin them. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to add some solder to my wires, and I like to have a decent amount on there, like a little blob of solder on there. So I'm not quite happy with the first one here. I'll go back, let it cool down a bit, and I'll go back and try and put a little bit more on there. And that's pretty good. Alright, next we want to tin the ESC. I'll just put something on there to hold it in place there. And this is when you want to go in and out quick. This is when you want to use high heat. So you don't want to keep your iron on there any, much longer than about 3 seconds. If you do that, you risk causing problems with these NFETs there. So let's just have a look how I do this. Try to get my hands out of the way. I'm gonna go in quick. 1, 2, 3, off. Going quick. 1, 2, 3, off. Going quick. 1, 2, 3, and get out of there. And that's it. Now I'm going to let that cool down for about 10 seconds. All right, make sure it's not too hot. By the time I go back on there with my motor, it's still feeling very hot now, as in like burning my fingers hot. I'm going to wait a little bit, let that cool down. As you can see now, difference between a joint here, which you got there's a very nice shiny blob of solder on there, nice and shiny, nice and hot joint on there now, because I'm using 800 Fahrenheit to solder this on there now. If you look at this and you compare it to this, you can tell the difference in the way the solder joint looks on there. Okay, now what we're going to do next is we're going to try to keep this kind of joint, nice and shiny joint like this, while adding our motor on there. Now I grab my motor, I want to line that up, and make sure I got a nice clean tip, nice and hot, and I'm going to put that on there. Go in, 1, 2, 3, get out. Go to the next one. So I need to move this around a bit, make sure I line up right, so that I do not do this while heating up the ESC. Line this up before I get on there with the iron, and I go in. 1, 2, 3, get out. And we'll go to the last one. Make sure I line this up nice and perfectly so that I don't need to do that while I've got heat on the ESC. Now this looks about right for me right here. About there. Some weight on there. I'm going to go in for 3 seconds, clean my tip. Make sure my tip is nice and clean. 1, 2, 3, get out. And here we are. Now, if we look at these joints here, if we can try and get as close as we can with the camera, notice that these joints are very nice and shiny. They are very even. And these are perfect joints on there. Meanwhile, I'm able to hold this in my hands now. I did not heat the PCB too much. I did not create any kind of disturbance to the NFEDs that are right next to the soldering pads on the ESC. And let's have a look at the difference now. Let's go back to the monitor and let's look at my joints. And then let's look at the customer's joints next to that. So there's a very, very clear difference there, and this kind of work here will cause problems if you buy a DIY kit and you don't have the proper soldering equipment. And basically it comes down to this, guys. You know, with like I mentioned earlier in the video, with the bigger ESCs, you've got a whole lot more copper on there, and when you start, you know, applying heat to the soldering pads, the ESC will be able to handle a whole lot more heat. When you're looking at a tiny little ESC like this, you got to go in, you got to get out quick, you got to use high heat and high quality solder, which is another thing I have not mentioned now, right? And then for guys who are kind of on the line where it seems to almost work well, but it's not looking quite as nice as what you're looking at here, well then adding flux to your mix, adding a bit of flux on your motor wires after you tin them, adding a bit of flux to your PCB here after you tin ESC might just be what's going to make the difference between you know, a joint that looks cold and really unhappy like this, and a joint that looks more like this. Right. Myself, I did not use flux today, and the reason why I did not use flux is because the solder that I use is very high quality, it's very expensive stuff, and so I don't need to use flux. But for a lot of, you know, I guess you could say lower grade solder, using flux will make a big difference in making the product work well for you. So that's it, guys. This is how you solder a small motor to a Nano ESCs successfully. I hope this is helpful. Thank you. Cheers.